The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are simply that, opinions. All are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Sensitive topics are discussed. Discretion is advised.
A husband accused of plotting with his au pair to kill his wife alleges he's being set up by police. What do the law enforcement text messages reveal? And a Massachusetts mother accused of the unthinkable, killing her 3 children and then jumping out of a second-floor window. Why her husband is blaming her psych medications. And in California, an Olympic snowboarder turned FBI's most wanted. Our panel gives their hot takes on an icy investigation. In the court of law, it's done for the day. Let's call to order Court of Opinion. Welcome to Court of Opinion. I'm Julia Janae. Thank you for being with us as we break down some of the biggest cases that are making headlines across our country. And we begin tonight in Virginia. All eyes are on the au pair affair murder trial of Brendan Banfield. The defense has taken center stage there. And prosecutors say this was a carefully orchestrated, deadly plan. They say Banfield catfished a man on a fetish dating site, invited him to his home for an attack fantasy on his wife, but it was all a setup for that man to take the fall for murder. See, Banfield is accused of faking an elaborate staged scene, one where he barged in on a stranger, attacking his wife, forcing him to shoot the man, Joseph Ryan, in defense of others. But the prosecution says Banfield is the one who then stabbed his wife. And what's more, they say he did this all with the help of his daughter's au pair, with whom he was having an affair. Now, she's already testified in this trial as a witness who took a deal. In a high-stakes move today, though, Banfield confirmed with the court he will testify in his own defense. So if he doesn't change his mind, that's going to happen next week. For now, let's watch the highlights from today together.
This is a picture that Ms. Banfield took of herself on the evening of January 17th.
What's the significance of that artifact and what you took from it to arrive at your conclusions?
This is information that was provided by Facebook. This is where Christine shared this photo with Brendan. So this was, again, from Ms. Banfield's laptop, and this is an Inova.org website, a VPN, so that's a remote access to the Inova website where she worked. And this ties into what we were talking about earlier, the sequencing and the window. So if this one at 11:07 and 49 seconds, and now if you could, jump to the next one. So this activity, which is a login to the suspect email account, was 23 seconds later, 24. We've gone from activity on the laptop unrelated to the scheme, 24 seconds later, to something central to the scheme. These are 3 FetLife messages that were sent outbound from the account purporting to be Christine's, and they occurred still on February 20th in the evening. So in the window we've been discussing between 10 and midnight or 11 and midnight. These are additional Telegram exchanges. This evening is significant, as we discussed, because this is when Telegram really ramped up, and this is the evening of the phone call. There was the Telegram call between 2 parties, and this is an extension of the activity that we were visualizing when we started this. The message on the top left, and there was discussion about being nervous in anticipation of a call, the voice call. So the first 2 messages are, just leading up to the call, and the third on the lower left reflects the call itself. It was an incoming call because this is from the perspective of Mr. Ryan's device, which was the origination of this material. So it was incoming from his perspective. And you can see the duration there is just shy of 42 minutes. For the corroboration effect, we can see the blue conversation bubble occurred at essentially midnight, 12:44 a.m. on the 21st. If you go back one slide, you'll see the associated Telegram activity when the Telegram app was open on the laptop.
Okay. And that's what you just described on this particular exhibit is in UTC time.
Correct. So it's just corroboration. We have Telegram activity on the laptop, and we have a Telegram conversation occurring contemporaneous to each of the instances of activation of Telegram use.
What were your conclusions based upon your digital forensic analysis of February 20th, 2023?
I didn't see anything here to suggest device takeover. I didn't see anything here to suggest misattribution.
Thank you, sir.
All right, a lot in front of this jury today from the defense's side. A lot of digital forensics, a lot of technical information. Let's parse it all out. Let's bring in our guest panel that we have standing by for us. Criminal defense attorney and civil attorney Jesse Law, also former special agent in charge of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. Trevor Randall is with us, and journalist and host of the YouTube podcast Something's Off, Rebecca Lavoie is with us. Great to have you all here with us on Court of Opinion. Jesse Law, if you'll start us off, because we're going to get to all of this with the catfishing and the forensics that came out today. But let's talk about the big news of the day, that Brendan Banfield is telling the court, yes, I'm going to testify. He could change his mind, but what do you think? Is this a good move?
Based on everything that we've seen so far, I'm always a big advocate of no defendant, do not testify. But given the fact that there is a lot of questions about whether Brendan was really the mastermind behind the fetish website and so forth, it may be beneficial, but I have a feeling that my co-panelists might jump down my throat on that one. Because, like I said, initially my first gut reaction is do not testify, because they will tear you apart about your location and why you were at the McDonald's and all these messages you had with your with the au pair and so forth like that. But in this particular case, with all that forensic evidence and so forth, it might be beneficial.
Okay, might be. Let's see what Rebecca thinks. Rebecca, he's been an interesting character in court, sitting at the defense table. He's constantly writing. Sometimes he is crying over the things that he sees in terms of his wife and the death and going back in time. What's your opinion of how you think he'll do as a defendant and what we might hear from him?
Well, we will see, I guess, which is really interesting. And normally I would say I actually agree that this could help him. What I've been noticing, and especially today, is that the defense is doing a really good job kind of taking apart the structure that the prosecution has built the case on, whether it's, where the mastermind theory came from and when and how, or the fact that we didn't hear from any detectives in the homicide unit. The structure is kind of loose in a way that I didn't expect in this case. So if you can get him up there, of course, the risk is also that he works for the IRS. How familiar is he with digital investigations? How familiar might he be with someone who want to cover their tracks? There are questions there that could hurt him. But in this case, I think demeanor especially might help him, as much as I hate demeanor evidence as evidence at all.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We know those jurors are always watching, though. Trevor, let me ask you, as someone who is a former special agent in charge at the GBI, digital forensics, in terms of going from the investigation, pulling everything, but then translating it for a jury, what's your opinion on the best way to do that?
I think that the digital forensics are going to speak for themselves. It is one of the things that I always enjoyed about this type of evidence is that it doesn't change and it speaks for itself, and you can follow it just like breadcrumbs all the way to the defendant's house, if you will. I personally disagree with my co-panelist. I love the fact that he's going to testify because, as she mentioned, the potential for them eating him alive is exactly what's going to happen. It is very difficult to remember all of the different tales that he came up with during the scheme and just remembering the lies. And it's going to come through with his body language. Jurors can always see through, the theatrics that he appears to be or is trying to appear to be distraught. And I think it's going to be, it's going to be game time.
Game time. Our eyes are going to be locked in on the cameras when he actually takes the stand. I want to take a listen because we started talking about the forensics. Let's take a listen to this piece of testimony during the defense case. This is from someone who's explaining how the accounts are set up. And again, this is a fetish website that they say Brendan Banfield set up for his wife, but the defense says no, the wife wanted this website.
Each account is linked to at least one other account, and that's significant for me as a digital forensic examiner because it's sort of a one or done. And the way the accounts were set up, so the Gmail account was set up first. The Gmail account was used to set up the FetLife account. So you couldn't set up the FetLife account unless you knew about and had access to the Gmail account. To have access to the Gmail account, you'd have to know it existed, and then you'd have to have the password to log into it. So the Gmail account sets up the FetLife account. The FetLife account was used to move conversations over to Telegram.
A very detailed, very extensive testimony. This is not the only witness that got on the stand to talk about something similar. Jesse, in terms of catfishing, because that's what this is alleged here, and you're hearing that term over and over inside of this courtroom. Talk about jurors taking that in. Are all generations going to understand what that is right away, or is that something that they've really got to be explained so they can wrap their head around it?
Well, depending on the makeup and the demographic age of the jury, it's possible that more than half of them could understand what the catfish theory is about how you could set up all these fake accounts and lure someone thinking that they're getting messages from a trusted source. And in fact, they're being lured into a situation by somebody else with very nefarious reasons. And I have a feeling that if the older individuals or people who are not so technically on top of things on the jury, I'm sure that the other jurors will be glad to educate them during the course of deliberating the case. So if there's a juror who says, can somebody please explain to me what a catfish is, that would happen. And, it happens in deliberations where you have other individuals trying to explain to somebody else what this theory is.
And that is the beauty of deliberations, right? Everyone comes into the room, they can share their own knowledge, and they base it on the facts. Rebecca, what do you think in terms of the catfishing angle here? It's not your typical catfishing story because normally it's someone trying to get money from someone and they're posing. We got this profile picture that was used to make Christine's account. It's one that was also sent to her husband, so he had access to that one. What's your take?
I think it's a very compelling theory. One of the things I was thinking about today, kind of putting myself in the minds of the juror, is for me the elephant in the room today is the oncoming weather. And that might sound silly, but there's all this technical testimony around how you could attribute one count to another and the order of operations of things. And I was thinking about the jurors who might be sitting there thinking, I need to go get milk. I need to go get bread. And I can't do that because I'm sitting here in this jury box right now. So I think that might have been a factor in terms of retention of some of this technical information. But as far as the theory itself goes, if I were the defense, one of the things I might point out, even though it might not be necessarily true, is that this catfishing in particular also looks a lot like the behavior of somebody who might be cheating on their spouse, the secret email account, the, using other profile pictures to set up profiles. So that might be an angle I would pursue, and they didn't do that today, but I think they might.
I like that angle on it. Trevor, catfishing involved in a murder case. Is that something you've seen before?
It's definitely not anything that I've seen before, but when you talk about catfishing and whether or not the which generation is familiar with the terminology, I like to call it the newest trick in the book, if you will, as it relates to all the different uses and nefarious uses of catfishing. But again, I think that it's easy when an individual is trying to cover their tracks when they come up with these elaborate schemes. Like something that you would see in a Lifetime movie, such as this case. But I think that they failed to realize, as the gentleman is talking about their website and how this is set up, if I built the car, there's no one better than me to tell you about the car and how it works. to be able to explain that, 1 and 2 doesn't equal 15 when you talked about the website and having the knowledge of the email addresses and things of that nature. But I haven't seen this before where the catfishing was used in a scheme such as this, but I like to refer to it as one of the newest tricks in the book. It certainly gets folks into trouble.
It is.
I don't know whether it's the newest thing, because catfishing has been around, even the term itself, especially when it comes to financial fraud cases or individuals who want to lure someone to a situation. I mean, it's right up there with the terminology of spam email, phishing, individuals who get, lured into these amazing financial scams in Africa and India or something like that. And they talk about catfishing of senior citizens. But in the criminal litigation context, we've seen a lot of that. And I would be surprised if we have jurors right there who are not familiar with the term, or at least having seen it in the media.
If not, they understand it now, because they have heard the term over and over again. We're going to keep talking about this case. Let's get to our break. And on the other side, again, we're still in Virginia, looking at the best evidence now presented by the defense during their case so far.
The Court TV podcast will return.
Welcome back. We are still in Virginia for the Au Pair Affair murder trial for Brendan Banfield, and now we're breaking down the best evidence the jurors have seen so far in the defense's case. Here's what our team chose as the most compelling. First up, body cam audio from the hospital where Brendan Banfield was told by a doctor that his wife Christine had died. So listen closely. You can hear his emotions as the doctor is telling him that there was no way she could have survived the stabbing.
My name is Gina. I'm one of the doctors here. Your wife has died. You were there, and it sounds like there was a lot of blood loss.
Yes.
And so I think that she died of blood loss. Her airway was actually okay. I'll call the medical examiner, of course, and we'll do an autopsy and make sure we know for certain. But
I was trying to apply pressure.
yeah. I mean, those were enormous wounds, and it's not.
There were so many.
Yes, and the neck is not compressible, so it's not possible really to stop all the blood loss. And her airway, it seems like, was in the midline okay. She was able to be intubated. Everything that was possible to be done was done for her right away. You did a wonderful, you did everything that was possible. It's not a survivable injury.
All right, let's bring back in our guest panel. We have with us Jesse Law and we have Rebecca Lavoie. We're going to work on Trevor Randall's signal in a moment. Jesse, let me ask you what you think about that kind of evidence. The defense wanting to bring it up again. I mean, there was a lot of body camera and audio played during the state's case, but they wanted to make sure that moment in time was heard by the jury during the defense case.
It's really demeanor evidence, Is he a great actor, or was that a genuine reaction to horrible news? The jury is going to have to take into consideration all the evidence that built up the police case against him, and then they have to decide whether whether the police cases hold water. I mean, the state's case hold water, or whether the defendant really puts up a good act. Because the number of times when the husband or the wife is implicated in their spouse's homicide, I mean, in most of those cases, I think the defendant's spouse is prepared to react appropriately when he's told or she's told of the spouse's death. I mean, if I killed my husband and I wanted to hide it, and then the doctor's telling me, oh, he didn't survive this injury, man, I better get my acting together and make sure I react appropriately. I'm so sorry.
And tough on people who react differently. Not everyone reacts the same, Rebecca, to everything. I know you said you don't really like this demeanor evidence, but the defense put it out front and center.
Yeah, I'm not a fan, generally speaking, because it works against women almost all of the time. A woman can't respond correctly no matter what. If she cries too much, it's acting. If she doesn't cry, she was a psychopath. And, the fact that it's even able to be put in as a piece of defense evidence, I think really speaks to that, the benefit of the doubt that men get in these instances. Another thing I think we need to consider is that both things can be true. He could have murdered her in this incredibly violent way and experienced the trauma of that, because she did die in an ugly and violent and deeply personal way. And it doesn't mean that he wouldn't cry, because she is dead, and even if he participated in it, he might be sort of summoning those awful memories. So that would be something I'd be considering if I were a juror as well.
Oh yeah, good points. Let's move on to a second piece of evidence that was shown to these jurors during the defense case. Now remember, one of their themes is that the police set up this defendant. He wasn't arrested for many, many months, 10 months after they arrested the first defendant in this case, the au pair. So this is a look at text messages from Victim Services Director Sally Fayez. Now, she was in this group chat with other law enforcement agents talking about the case, and Sally is saying things like, he sounds like a big baby, and another person responds saying he's gonna fold. Now, Sally testified about the quote, catfishing theory and when it became part of the case.
Were you ever involved in the theory of catfishing?
Yes.
Did you suggest catfishing?
I did not suggest catfishing. I suggested that it be proven that it's not catfishing. I think there were things that came out a couple of days after the murder that made people question whether this was a catfish or not.
Jesse, I'm going to start with you on this one because I want to clear something up. You know, she's a victim services individual inside of the police department, and she's on this group chat with other law enforcement individuals, and they're kind of talking about this case, and they're saying, oh, this is in the jail calls. Oh, this is something that may happen. The au pair is going to testify, you know, all these different things. Is that normal for the person who is supposed to be attending to the child in this case to be this involved in the investigation?
Well, it is possible if they believe that the victim advocate in this particular case would have information that could add to the case or to their theory of the case. I'm not certain what information she would get if she was only speaking to the child, or maybe I think during the course of the conversations with the child, they were talking about the child's conversations with the au pair. So they're perhaps hoping that she had information that could add to that theory of the case, that this may have been a conspiracy between the au pair and the defendant, who together were in a love relationship. So there was already adultery involved there. And they were just basically looking for information that they could patch together and see whether this is a plausible catfish situation.
Yeah, you're right. That conversation with the child where the victim services representative said that she overheard the au pair saying, I wish I could be your mom. I wish I could marry your dad. The kid saying, I wish you would marry my dad. Trebor, we have you back. I'm so glad that we have you back on. Trebor Randall, tell me about your opinion of this evidence where it goes to the defense's theory that police had tunnel vision. They only wanted to see what they saw. They've got these text messages where they're basically all trying to bring him down. That's according to the defense.
Well, again, that's the job of any good investigator. That is our ultimate goal, is to bring him down. Even if there's additional information that we're looking at this other co-conspirator, we have to acknowledge that the information, the digital forensic, this information is very damning. All roads are leading to our defendant, appropriately so.
Yeah, all roads seemingly, but they are trying their best during this time that they have the defense case. We got one more piece of evidence to show you. This is defense witness Harry Linsky. Him saying on the stand that Christine Banfield did not lose control or possession of her devices, and believes that Christine was the one using the FetLife account, that fetish account, and other sites to communicate with Joseph Ryan. He also said that there were no gaps in usage between who he believes would be Christine and the activity related to FetLife.
Based upon your review of this data, were you able to draw any opinions related to this case?
I was.
And what were those opinions?
That catfishing did not occur.
Rebecca, one of the powerful things about this as defense evidence was that this was not like a paid expert for them.
Right. It's very compelling. And now, granted, when I say something is compelling, what I mean is it would be compelling if I were a juror and were trying to absorb all of this new information, aside from my own opinions about whether or not this may or may not have occurred. It's interesting to think about a jury having a conversation about this while they're deliberating. And something that might come up might be Occam's razor, right? This is a 4-year-old who made a statement that triggered this witness advocate to begin talking about a theory that then the cops, built, and it's kind of like a 4-dimensional chess theory. This had to have happened, and this had to have happened, and they always had to be home at the same time, et cetera. And if you're sitting in the jury room and you've heard this somewhat neutral expert say this, you might say, like, what is more likely? What's the Occam's razor of it? Is she just having clandestine communications with somebody that she wants to be unfaithful with? Or did this very complicated thing happen and that police devised that then, they had confirmation bias and were trying to make all the puzzle pieces fit?
Yeah, that is, I want to also clarify something. I misspoke. Litsky was actually a private investigator, but Brendan Miller, who had the same findings, was not. So it's compelling if you've got someone who was actually working for the government who came up with that theory that no, Christine had control over her devices. So we'll see. Brendan Miller's actually going to be back on the stand when things start up again there in Virginia. Coming up, we're going to get their hot takes on the cold facts. Our panel gives us their opinion on today's biggest headlines. And this includes a former Ivy Leaguer back in federal court, a former Olympian arrested, and a former CEO asked the president for a shorter sentence.
Now, back to the Court TV podcast.
Let's get right to the hot takes on the cold hard facts. Here's our first headline. Luigi Mangioni's federal murder trial in the killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson will begin with jury selection on September 7th. A judge reconfirmed that today. The judge said the scheduling of the rest of the trial is contingent on whether she allows prosecutors to seek the death penalty. He was back in court today as his lawyers are arguing over certain evidence they want excluded from his trial, including his backpack when it was seized during his arrest in December of 2024. Inside of that backpack was a gun that they say was linked to this killing and a manifesto where he wrote about what he planned to do allegedly. Now, his lawyers say the search of his backpack was done illegally because they didn't have a proper warrant. Let's bring back in our guest panel. They each have 25 seconds on the clock so we can get to everyone. We have Jesse Lal, Trebor Randall, and Rebecca Lavoie. Jesse, I'm going to start with you. We give you 25 seconds. Tell me your take on the Luigi Mangione trial.
Well, are we talking about the backpack? Yeah, I mean, if he was arrested and he had the backpack on him, and that was, they have a right to pat him down and check the backpack for any signs of guns and so forth, that could be in. But if the backpack is at a different location, I don't recall all the facts about the arrest, then yes, I think they would need to get a warrant unless there were exigent circumstances, which so far I've not heard.
Trebor, they found that backpack on the bus that he had been on.
Again, that's going to be very tricky, and depending on if he has a really, really good defense attorney. It's kind of like the marijuana's in the backseat of the car, and I have 2 passengers. Any of those individuals can be attached to that. I think that the rest of the evidence is going to give you the different elements that you need for them to show he's in possession of that pack.
Rebecca, your take. We've got this trial coming up, but it may be longer if the death penalty stays on the table.
Yeah, regarding the backpack, there are chain of custody issues also with the backpack that are very interesting. But what I'm actually looking for is the collision of politics and current events with the timing of this trial. It's in the new year. Obamacare subsidies have been gutted. Premiums are rising. I personally picked up a prescription today. It cost me 3 times as much as it did in December. And you have to wonder how many of the jurors are experiencing the same thing.
Thank you for those takes. To our panel, let's move to our second story. Ryan Wedding, a former Olympic snowboarder turned FBI's most wanted fugitive, has been arrested. He's a 44-year-old Canadian who was on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list in connection with indictments that allege he is responsible for trafficking, quote, multi-ton quantities of cocaine from Colombia to Canada. He was also wanted for orchestrating multiple murders for hire of victims and government witnesses. Now, FBI Director Kash Patel said that he was taken into custody Thursday night in Mexico, where he's believed to have been hiding there for more than a decade. Trevor Randall, let me start with you on this one. 25 seconds, your take on the snowboarding fugitive.
I, again, find this case very interesting in that many of our athletes are artists and people who are very popular, in our lives happen to be criminals. And I think this is going to be one of those cases where, although he may have been loved based on his talents, I think we're going to find that this is something that he already had in him, that he never let go from his past. And I think he ought to be held accountable for what he was doing.
Rebecca Lavoie, what's your take?
The optics of this arrest are very interesting. From what I understand, it was a negotiated arrest with somebody who's associated with the Sinaloa cartel and had the nicknames El Jefe and I think Public Enemy were another one. If you compare that with the optics of some other things we've seen around drugs in the news and in politics recently, it's actually kind of interesting. And of course, this is a white Canadian, and you have to wonder, are there two separate things in operation here for folks suspected of these crimes?
Jesse Lal, your take.
He's a runaway drug dealer found in Mexico, and the federal government, led by Kash Patel, who has his own baggage right now, has found this criminal, and they've hauled him into the U.S., extradited him, and they're going to prosecute him for drug dealing and murder. I mean, I hope it doesn't get into a political context. I hope they focus on the evidence and the jury sees that.
Yeah, but leave it there. Let's move to our third and final story of the night. Elizabeth Holmes, we remember her. She has asked the Trump administration for a reduced prison sentence. She's the disgraced Theranos founder. She filed this request in 2025, and it's still pending as of January 2026, according to the Office of the Pardon Attorney's website. Now, Holmes was sentenced to more than 11 years in federal prison in 2022 after being convicted of 3 counts of wire fraud and 1 count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Attorneys for Holmes and the White House, they have not commented on this. We think always about these pardons and wondering, oh, is it possible? Probably not. Very low chance. But just the fact that she is still trying. Jesse Lal, your take.
She tried. She tried during her trial. She tried before her trial. She pled. She thought she could get away with it during her trial, but the evidence was so highly stacked against her, and she was duly and properly convicted and serving a jail time. Now, getting a pardon from the Trump administration, well, the Trump administration has surprised us many, many times in the recent past with quite a few pardons that, have a lot of us scratching our heads. So I'm not looking at my magic 8-ball for this one.
Let's go to Trevor. I mean, we have seen some pardons that have been interesting, but a lot of these high-profile ones, though, get turned down. What's your take on Ms. Holmes wanting to be pardoned?
Right about now, I think the world we live in, anything goes. I do not think we should be surprised if there's a surprise turn in this request for a pardon. We've seen, the good ones, the bad ones, the not so good ones actually be granted this. And right about now, as I mentioned, anything goes. So I would not be surprised. And if I was a betting woman, I would say she's going to get what she asked for.
Oh, okay. Rebecca, let me move to you, and let's talk about the court of public opinion on Ms. Holmes, because sometimes that impacts a pardon, yes or no, because if they don't have a very good reputation, people are very offended by certain elements of their character or what they've done. But where do you think she stands now in the court of public opinion after everything?
Well, if you followed any of the excellent reporting on this case, excellent documentaries on this case, excellent podcasts on this case, and even excellent scripted series on this case, the one thing that we have all learned is that Holmes is excellent at asking rich, powerful men for something and then getting it. So I would bet she actually is going to get this pardon because she knows her target audience very well.
Oh, wow. Lovely takes from everyone. So good to have you all on, Rebecca, Trevor, and Jesse. We hope you'll be back. We have to leave it there. Thank you for connecting with us this hour. I'm Julia Janae, reminding you we all have opinions. Make sure they are rooted in facts.
This podcast is a production of Court TV. Go to CourtTV.com for more content, trials on demand, and to find out how to watch Court TV in your area.